All right, welcome back, everybody, to Sports Chat Episode 4. As always, this is Ethan, Jordan, Ryan, mixed them up. But anyway, the first topic we're going to be talking about today, guys, is some NFL trades. So the big story, obviously, we'll get into all of them in a second, but the first trade that kind of went haywire was the Aaron Rodgers, not necessarily a trade, but like the big move was Aaron Rodgers staying with the Green Bay Packers, allegedly signed a 4-year, $200 million deal, although that was proved not to be the actual contract. I think it's a great move for the Packers, and they're going to continue to own the NFC North.
I mean, as a Vikings fan, it stinks to see Aaron Rodgers come back to Green Bay, but it would just be odd to see him on a different team. So I'm glad he went back to Green Bay, and hopefully the rivalry can continue. I mean, it obviously is no matter what, but hopefully Anthony Barr can have something for Aaron Rodgers the next time he sees him.
As a Jets fan, I am glad that the Jets do not play the Packers hardly ever. I think it's every 4 years, but it's good to see Aaron Rodgers back on the Packers. It's gonna be interesting to see if they can pull it back again year after year. See what happens with Davante Adams. It's good. I'm glad that happened.
Yeah. So the same day they also franchise tag Davante, so he's back as well. So now we're going to see, though, what happens with the cap deal or the cap space for the Packers, because I'm sure Aaron Rodgers wants a cap-friendly deal. Like, obviously, he said he wanted to be the highest-paid player in the NFL, but at the same time, I think he also wants to win a Super Bowl. So would he take a pay cut to make that happen? I think he definitely would. And the fact that he didn't completely agree with the $50 million a year deal, I think kind of highlights that. But overall, I think, the Packers are going to have another solid season. I think there's no one who can really rival them in the North. No offense, Jordan, but like, I think the Packers will definitely be a good playoff contender, definitely a Super Bowl contender, because the NFC is wide open. Like, you've got the Rams, but besides that, Brady is gone. Like, which other teams do you guys see really competing?
I don't know. I feel like the Cardinals could.
Cardinals could if
Cardinals
they
are
have a
good, but I
better
feel like Kyler Murray just needs a couple more years under his belt, and then he can do something.
Yeah,
he needs
maybe
more experience. But going back to Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, I was happy to see Davante Adams sign back to the Packers, because you can't really. It would be tough to see one without the other. So I'm glad they stuck together. And in my opinion, right now they're one of the best wide receiver quarterback duos. And I feel like just that alone, Green Bay is already a contender.
One of the best of all time, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've definitely performed so well over the years. Plus, regardless, Packers are getting back the 1-2 combo with Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. It's going to be exciting to watch, especially as a Packer fan. And the first thing I thought about when Aaron Rodgers signed was how devastated the Broncos fans must have been.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, wow, for their hopes to get up so high, they hired Nathaniel Hackett, the former Packers offensive coordinator, as their new head coach. So a lot of people were speculating.
They were trying to steal the Packers organization.
Yeah, they're speculating that Rodgers was going to go there. But, it didn't take long, I think, for the Broncos to be happy. Right, guys? I mean, Russell Wilson, absolutely amazing quarterback. Obviously had injury trouble last year, but Denver gave up quite a bit for him, but I think it's definitely worth it, especially if they want to compete in that AFC West division with Chiefs, not really the Raiders and the Chargers. So I think it was definitely a move the Broncos needed to make if they wanted to, utilize their young talent right now.
Well, not the Chargers. The Raiders did pretty good this past year.
The Raiders are underrated, I would say.
They are underrated.
With all the challenges they had to deal with, Derek Carr is probably one of the quarterbacks that get overlooked a lot, but he performs pretty well.
Plus, they got Josh Jacobs.
Well, now it's going to be tough. I mean, the Broncos last year were kind of not a joke, I would say, but they weren't really a contender. Now this year, you got Russell Wilson. It's like they've got 3 teams that are better than the Raiders. It's going to be tough for them. But yeah, Derek Carr, I do agree he's an underrated quarterback, but like, goodness, I mean, you've got
it's just the Raiders organization.
He had to deal with so much, like John Gruden and Henry Ruggs.
Yeah,
terrible incidents over there, but he was able to perform well and get him into the playoffs. But going back to the Russell Wilson trade, I feel like the big names that were traded were, of course, Russell Wilson and the Broncos tight end Noah Fant to the Seattle Seahawks. I'd say both teams did fairly good in this trade. I feel like both teams can find like some positive out of this trade. But Russell Wilson to Denver, he's a great mobile quarterback who can create plays like on his own. And I feel like Denver having that type of quarterback can go pretty far this year.
True. Wilson to the Broncos, I like a lot. The Broncos did give up a lot, like you said. They had Noah Fant. He went away to Seattle. He's a pretty solid tight end. And then Drew Lock as well also went away. I mean, not that that's a big issue because they got Russell Wilson now, but also Shelby Harris on defense. And they also gave up 2 first round, 2 second rounds, and a 3rd round pick, I believe, is what the trade was. It's good for both teams. I think it benefits both teams very well, but I don't know if Seattle is in a rebuilding mood. They should be rebuilding mode because of all the first round picks they got, and they got already DK Metcalf and what's the other wide receiver?
Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, Tyler Lockett. They've got a lot of weapons.
They have Chris Carson in the backfield.
They do have Chris Carson. As long as he can get rid of his injuries.
Yeah.
Stay healthy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the number one thing with running backs.
Yes, almost all running backs get hurt at some point.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that last week. Like
We did.
every bottom team has like an elite running back, like the Panthers, the Giants, and they just can't stay healthy. But
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be tough to tell with Seattle because obviously you still have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Those are 2 very solid weapons that are definitely, I would say, top tier compared to the rest of the NFL.
Yeah.
I think anyone would be happy to have those 2 weapons, but the quarterback decision is going to be interesting. I think it's going to be Drew Lock from day one. But
Seattle does have Geno Smith.
Do have Geno Smith, exactly.
True.
But you never know with Pete Carroll. He might, switch things up a bit. You can make some moves in free agency, try to pick up some.
Plus, now they have the 9th pick
quarterbacks.
overall, I believe. So
Yeah,
They
they
could do
could.
something with the drafts.
Yeah, they could get a quarterback if they wanted to.
There's a quarterback out of Liberty. I forgot his name.
Malik
but
Willis, I think.
Malik Willis.
Yeah.
Whatever his name is. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he's looks solid. So
Yeah. Another thing for the Seahawks is they released Bobby Wagner, which is kind of an interesting move. I would have thought that they were rebuilding because of that move, but apparently Pete Carroll thinks differently, that they're not in rebuilding mode.
Yeah, 100%. With Bobby Wagner leaving, he was like the captain of the defense, I'd say. He was like the main factor. And with him leaving, I would suspect that they would be in rebuild mode. But apparently, according to Pete Carroll, they want to compete, which I don't blame him for wanting to compete. But
he might just be saying that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think a coach ever wants to admit they're rebuilding.
Yeah,
but
true.
because how are you gonna keep fans interested if you're
Yeah.
it's just gonna be a down year? But
Mhm.
I mean, there goes the Legion of Boom, arguably the greatest defense of all
Yeah.
time. Cam Chancellor retired, then you got
Sherman.
Richard Sherman leaving, and now
Yeah.
the final domino kind of
Thomas.
fell. Earl Thomas was a big
Mhm.
one.
that defense was insane.
That defense
Yeah.
was insane.
Probably the best defense of all time. Easily
I don't know.
the best defense I've seen.
Ravens in the early 2000s.
With Ray Lewis, right?
Yeah.
That
That
was-
was pretty good.
That was also
That was
crazy.
good defense.
Yeah, Ed Reed. Yeah, that defense was good. But it's it's speculation. We'll just say one of the greatest of all time, no
Yes,
doubt.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that was a big move. And then it was yesterday that the Washington Commanders traded for Carson Wentz.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, I think, don't understand how solid Carson Wentz is. He had a down. He had 2 games last year, I think, toward the end of the
Yep,
stretch
the
where
last
he had
2 games of the
last
season.
2 games he did terrible. But during the year, he was a solid starter. And the Colts were a legitimate contender
Mhm.
the entire year. And you can't have a legitimate contender without a solid quarterback. So I think it was a good move for the Commanders. Unfortunately, you have other people who don't agree with the move because they made it clear early on that they were looking at all 32 NFL teams or 31 NFL teams and asking them for their best offering quarterback, and they just ended up with Carson Wentz. But I think it was a solid move, and it's something that I think is going to be Washington's best quarterback since Kirk Cousins, in my opinion.
Mm.
See, the thing with me about Carson Wentz is that he had a great year. The year the Eagles won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles, because Carson Wentz got hurt at the end of the season.
Yeah.
But Carson Wentz was really, really good during that year. And I feel like if he can stay healthy, then maybe there can be an uptick in his performance. But I'd say he's a solid quarterback, but he's not he's certainly not an elite quarterback, but he can win some games with Washington, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think Washington really stole Carson Wentz. I mean, I know it's arguable that he is that good of a quarterback. But they got him for allegedly 2 third-round picks for a quarterback that was an MVP candidate his first year. And sure, he's gone downhill a little bit, I guess a lot of it since then. But you never know what he's still got in the tank. Carson Wentz, he's not too injury prone. Sometimes he has injuries, but some season, I don't think this past season he didn't get hurt that much. Was he hurt? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think he was.
Yeah, so I feel like it's a very low risk, potential high reward for the Washington Commanders because if you look at they have Fitzpatrick. I think he's a free agent, I believe, so he's not going back. Obviously now, but they needed a quarterback, and that filled the role, and we'll see what happens with that.
It was definitely a great move by Washington getting Carson Wentz. We can just see what happens.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be very interesting. Now you want to go into some former power rankings.
Sure.
These, keep in mind, these were all post-trade, post-move. So
pre-trade.
Pre-trade, my bad. Pre-trade. So all the teams are going to list that actually made moves. It's going to be tough to rank them. But we talked about the Seattle Seahawks last time at number 21. You can definitely expect them to be lower than that now, I think.
Yes, I agree.
But now coming to number 20, Miami with Tua. We'll see. We'll see how it goes with them. I thought they had a good bounce back toward the end of the year with Brian Flores, but obviously he's gone.
Yeah.
But Miami, they've got potential. I think it's tough to tell with some of these teams, but it's just all about, in my opinion, how Tua does if he can stay consistent throughout the year, because there's been some stretches where he's looked amazing, and there's obviously been some stretches where he's looked absolutely awful, like he shouldn't have even been drafted. So I think Miami Dolphins at 20, I think it's a solid rank for now, but they could either go higher or lower, obviously. It's kind of like a team with some inconsistency, and I have no idea where they could end up at the end of the year. So
yeah, I would say it's a respectable spot being in 20, because you don't really know if they're going to go down. They're going to have a down year. They're going to have an up year. So put them in 20. I'm fine with that. They need Tua, obviously, to perform better. He's like a decent quarterback, but he can go either like on a hot streak or like on a cold streak. So see how well he performs. And then if he performs well, then the rest of the team will perform well. I feel like Brian Flores was a really good coach. Miami won some good games down the stretch. So see what happens next year with Miami.
Yeah, decent is a good word for Tua Tagovailoa, because he's, like you said, he's got the hot streaks, he's got the cold streaks. It's just up in the air every game, honestly. Even against the Jets, that's the game I'm most familiar with, the final game against the Jets. Not the final game of the season, but the final game that they played this year. The Tua was not looking too great. Looked solid in the first half. No, sorry. He looked not good in the first half and then came back a little bit in the second half to win the game, but barely inked out a win there against the Jets, who are not too great. We're not too great this year, at least. But I think that the Dolphins should be lower on this list. Yes, they have the talent. They have a pretty solid defense that sometimes in games will do very well. Sometimes in games will not do very well. They've also got some offensive weapons, some wide receivers. But I think the biggest problem is the Brian Flores, this whole scandal that's going down right now. Because with Brian Flores, he's going to put the Dolphins on like the face of the NFL, and everyone's going to know, and this scandal is going to be at the forefront. And I mean, maybe it gets resolved before next season starts, but we'll see what happens, because he lost the first, what was it? They were like 1-7 or 1-8, something like that. And then they won like 7 straight, and they went on a run, and apparently he was supposed to be paid for every loss. That, right? I think that's how, yeah, he was supposed to be paid for every loss that they got, and he was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So then that's the alleged thing that happened. So we'll see what happens next year with the Dolphins, but I feel like that's going to be at the forefront of their minds, and they're not going to be able to perform at that level again.
Yeah, well, Brian Flores now is the defensive coordinator, I believe, of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes.
So at least he landed a job, and solid system with Mike Tomlin. So at least he's got a job, but yeah, those scandals are.
I'm happy with everything played out well for Brian Flores, but I feel like Miami being like the front center now with all those scandals, they're either gonna like perform well, or that's gonna bother them for next season, and they're going to perform badly. So see how everything plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So number 19 on this list, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, the big news is that Tom Brady retired. But in the Buccaneers case, they did franchise tag Chris Godwin. So he is coming back. But the big question is, I mean, what are they going to do about quarterback? Honestly, like I literally have no idea what's up Bruce Arians' sleeve. So we'll just have to wait and see. But their defense is still looking solid. I don't know if they have a lot of free agents this year, but I know for a fact, they re-signed Chris Godwin. They still got Fournette. So they'll still have a solid team. It's just they got to fill that quarterback position.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. With Tampa Bay, it's all about Tom Brady leaving. So see what they need to fill out the quarterback role. And then from there, they already have like a stellar offense with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Leonard Fournette. They have a pretty good defense as well, I'd say. So their team is complete. They just need a quarterback to get them into competition level.
Yeah, and I'm assuming Gronk is still planning on coming back at this point, but it's a possibility that he could retire. He's considered it again, retiring again. But Antonio Brown is no longer there as well. He's a free agent, and that quarterback role is really what needs to be fulfilled, and that's why they're number 19 on this list. But a good quarterback, I think, that is a free agent this year that might fit with the Buccaneers again is Jameis Winston, because Jameis Winston, he was the leading pass yard. He had the most pass yards in the year with the Buccaneers when he threw like 1,000 interceptions and 1,000 touchdowns. No, he had a ton of interceptions and a ton of touchdowns, but also a ton of yards. And this was pretty much every game. He would have like 400 yards and 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. It was crazy. It was a great season, but also a not great season. But with the Saints last year, he kept those turnovers to a minimum and kept the touchdowns pretty high. Not pretty high. I would say average, but less than average turnovers. And the yardage was okay. It was fine. But when he was with the Saints, they were 5-2, I believe. And then he got hurt and was out for the year. But a potential turnaround coming back to the Buccaneers would be a very interesting move for Jameis Winston. And I feel like he would be a very good fit again because he's got those offensive weapons that he's already familiar with. He's pretty familiar with the system because he came from the Buccaneers, and he's got all these offensive weapons. So I would argue that the Buccaneers should really go after Jameis Winston or another quarterback like that instead of drafting a new quarterback.
Yeah, Jameis Winston would fit perfectly in Tampa Bay, especially since didn't he get surgery on like his eye or something?
Yep.
And
yeah.
Ever since he got that surgery, he's been like a whole complete different quarterback. Like he went from like really good or really bad to like pretty like really good now. So if he goes back to Tampa Bay and he limits those turnovers and he knows the system and they have a pretty good team, I feel like that would be a perfect fit for Jameis Winston.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you guys want to go through these next 18 through 10 pretty quickly. So we could get, we could cover some free agency.
Yeah.
All right. So now coming in number 18, New Orleans Saints. Like you said, Ryan, they did have Jameis Winston. He was doing well. A fair ranking for the Saints. I mean, they had Drew Brees obviously gone last year. So it's first year without their legendary quarterback, arguably the greatest quarterback in Saints history. But they do have a solid core. I think they still, have Taysom Hill is that quarterback tight end position. I never know.
Wide receiver, running back.
Literally never know what he's going to do.
He's
but
like Cordell Patterson out there.
Yeah. They still got Taysom Hill. And the Saints are always going to be solid. I think, So I think Sean Payton, also retired. So they don't have Sean Payton now. So
True.
I think it's a little too high for the Saints personally. I think they're going to have a down year because I don't know what they're doing at head coach. Sean Payton, I feel like, had a system. He's always been a solid, one of the best head coaches in the league, and now it's like he's gone. So I think the Saints are definitely going to be lower than 18, but obviously we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, ever since Drew Brees left, they're going to be on a downfall because they don't have that Hall of Fame quarterback anymore. They don't have that Hall of Fame coach anymore. So they got to fill out those two positions first. They have Alvin Kamara, obviously, who can carry them to like a couple of wins. But I don't see them like competing for a Super Bowl anytime soon. And Michael Thomas, like I don't really know what's up with Michael Thomas, but
Mhm.
he's on the field or like he's off the field for like 5 weeks. So
Yeah, way too many injuries for him.
Yeah. So hopefully, like I want to see the Saints do good, but without having Drew Brees or without having a head coach, like they're gonna be on a downfall.
Unfortunately for Saints fans, I think that the Saints are going to be in a couple years here where they're not going to do so well. Except I feel like Alvin Kamara is going to do really well in the next, at least this upcoming year. I have a feeling that he's going to pop off. But I'm not sure what the Saints are going to be able to do without a quarterback. Jameis Winston, if he comes back, might be able to fulfill that role again. I have no faith in Taysom Hill. I don't know what it is, but he's a college quarterback to me. He runs the ball and he passes okay, but he's not an NFL quarterback in my opinion. And they got Ian Book as a backup who didn't really do too well in his start last year. He could do well, you never know, but I feel like he's also a college quarterback because, he's from college. But if they are able to draft a good quarterback or do something with trade or something, I feel like that the Saints could do well, but I think they're going to be in a downward spiral here for the next couple of years.
Yeah, so I completely forgot Alvin Kamara, that night incident after the Pro Bowl.
Oh, that's right.
So he's not. So if he gets convicted, he's going to be out for 5 years. So hopefully, I don't. It's a bit of a sticky situation.
That's
but
right.
We'll see what happens. But I forgot to mention that Alvin Kamara, after that incident, may not be playing.
Yeah, I was gonna say like before,
Yeah.
Obviously before the Super Bowl, big news right after the Pro Bowl.
Completely forgot about that. But yeah, right after the Pro Bowl, there was a nightclub incident.
That's right. I forgot about that as well.
That's why the Saints definitely gonna be in a downhill slump for sure.
Mhm.
Now number 17, I'm sure Jordan can talk a lot about them. Minnesota Vikings. Before the Rodgers stipulation, if he didn't come back, I think the Vikings are definitely top contenders to win the NFC North. Now not so much, but they've got some young talent. I think Kirk Cousins is just mediocre. Vikings are definitely overpaying for him, no doubt. But they've got Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook. They've got some good talent behind them. It's just, can the Vikings make that push in the NFC, get a wild card spot, and exceed expectations this year? I don't know.
Yeah, the one problem with the Vikings is they definitely overpaid Kirk Cousins, and they kept him for the contract was for 5 years, so we had to deal with that. But Kirk Cousins is the major issue, I would say. He's a decent quarterback and can win us some games, make it into the playoffs, but he's not like a Aaron Rodgers type level. Our offensive line has always been the biggest struggle for the Vikings. I say if we revamp the offensive line, I think Kirk Cousins, this may be his last year, so see what happens with Kirk Cousins. But we have Dalvin Cook, which, in my opinion, is the best running back in the league. Justin Jefferson, who's top 5, maybe even top 3 wide receiver, and then Adam Thielen complements him nicely. So I say Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, great duo. Dalvin Cook, one of the best running backs in the league. Our defensive side, we used to be a great defensive team, but now everyone left. I say Harrison Smith is one of the major X factors back there. Anthony Barr, Eric Hendricks, Daniil Hunter even. I would just say that we need more defensive backs and just a whole new team pretty much, I'd say. The offense is great, but the defense needs to improve. But I like where they're at on this list, but hopefully we can put some wins together and make it into the playoffs.
Yeah, Jordan being the Vikings fan, I'm just going to leave it to him. That was pretty good. He said everything I was going to say.
I would also say with the Vikings was that the issue was Mike Zimmer. And now that he's gone, we'll see what happens with our new head coach and our new general manager.
Yeah, definitely. You guys got the offensive coordinator from the Rams, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks like a solid move, but you never know with those types of guys, though, because the Bears got Matt Nagy, former offensive coordinator of the Chiefs, and obviously that didn't work out. So we'll see. I think the Vikings head coaching position, I think Zimmer out the door was definitely the best move you guys could have made, though.
Yeah, 100%. And we got new head coach, new general manager. So let's see where this organization moves into.
Yeah, definitely. Now coming in number 16, the Philadelphia Eagles. I honestly think Jalen Hurts is going to have a really good year this year. He showed signs last year Some games he had a down year, but definitely the start of the season, I thought he looked really solid. And then he picked it up toward the end a little bit. Not too much else I have to say about the Eagles. The biggest thing is they took Jalen Reagor, and everyone still can't believe that because he's just not lived up to expectations so far. But I think this is really going to be not a developmental year per se. It's going to be more of a year where Jalen Hurts is going to have to prove himself to be the franchise quarterback. But he's definitely showed signs, and I think he's going to be what the Eagles want at quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the Eagles could win the division if it wasn't for Dallas. I mean, Eagles are on the come up, and Jalen Hurts is, I would say, their guy. So we'll see what happens with the Eagles.
Yeah, I agree. I like Hurts as a quarterback. He's good at running, good at passing, and this is going to be an important year for him. I would also agree with that. They've also got 3 first-rounders this year, which could really add to their offense and defense. And also, even aside from Jalen Hurts, I know a lot revolves around him, but there was a couple games last season. I know there was one game where the Eagles put up 42 points, I believe, and Jalen Hurts had 0 touchdowns. And it was just crazy that he just got carried by his defense and his running backs. I think they had 4 rushing touchdowns that game. And he doesn't need to revolve. The offense doesn't need to revolve around him, but he is the quarterback. And if they're going to succeed in the long run, then it's going to have to be like that.
Definitely agree. Yeah, now coming in number 15, this is another team greatly impacted by the moves made during this week, the Las Vegas Raiders. So now it's tough to tell because they have to deal with the Broncos now with Russell Wilson. So you kind of look at them and you're like, are they really number 15? Like Derek Carr is a solid quarterback, but are they really going to be that top tier? I think they're going to finish last in the division. And if they finish last in the AFC West, like, are they really the 15th spot? I don't think so. So, like, that's obviously a tough division. Great quarterbacks, but I think the Raiders, they drop a lot on this list, according to what happened a couple days ago with Russell Wilson.
With the Raiders, they made the playoffs last year, yes, but they also had like 6 game-winning field goals, which is super clutch for Daniel Carlson, but they could have easily lost those games, and then they would have been they would have had a terrible record this past year. So the Raiders, I know they're underrated, but I do not have that much faith in them for the next season, especially with the new moves with Russell Wilson.
With me is that they might end up last, but I like this spot on the list because the season hasn't happened yet, so you don't know, and they made it to the playoffs. And Derek Carr is very underrated, so we can just see if he has another great year, if he has a downfall year. But I would say he has another great year. And also with Josh Jacobs in the backfield for him, I feel like they complement each other really nicely. So if Josh Jacobs has an amazing year and Derek Carr has like another decent year, then I would say they can contend for a playoff spot.
Yeah, they could be. All 4 of those teams can. Well, it's tough because, you've got the top 3 teams are going to be Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos, probably.
Yeah.
We don't know, but, that's what everyone's thinking.
I would say that's the toughest division in the NFL.
Oh, for sure.
Although,
it used
I don't
to
know.
be the NFC West, was it?
With Rams, Cardinals,
Seahawks, but not like the Seahawks are in a downfall.
True.
So
yeah.
I think, that AFC West toughest division in the league. So we'll see what happens with the Raiders. But, just the cards they were dealt, very tough. Now coming in number 14, the Cleveland Browns. I feel like, in my personal opinion, Baker Mayfield got way too much hate last year. He did not have a great year, but he was injury prone he was injured the entire year. Like, people don't understand how his shoulder was just destroyed from like day one. They do have some solid weapons. They still got David Njoku coming back. But the biggest thing again is, like, I keep going back to it, the quarterback position. Like, is Baker Mayfield going to be able to stay healthy enough for the Browns to make a push for the playoffs? And I think it's really going to determine whether he stays on the Browns as their franchise quarterback, because if he's injured again, like, I think they might have to go back to the drawing board and see what they do in terms of their quarterback position.
Yeah. I would just say I feel bad for Browns fans seeing OBJ leave and then win a Super Bowl. I mean, from their perspective, I bet it was kind of tough watching that all play out. But Baker Mayfield, I feel like, is still their guy. I feel like he can perform well. If he stays healthy, then he's gonna play pretty good. I would say, like, taking it way back, I would say he's like Johnny Manziel, but a better Johnny Manziel for the Browns. Johnny Manziel was like the best college football athlete, I would say, like quarterback position. And Baker Mayfield was like the similar person, like just his personality. But Baker Mayfield could be that guy, and Baker Mayfield could pop off for like a lot of games. So let's see what happens.
He could. It's kind of interesting that you mentioned OBJ because he's such a, as we know, especially with the Rams, he kind of proved himself this past year that he's a very, very competent and very good wide receiver for many teams. However, with Baker Mayfield and OBJ on the Browns, Baker Mayfield had a better passing completion when OBJ was not on the field, which is kind of interesting because OBJ is such a good wide receiver and can catch so many balls, but he just wasn't working out with the Browns, and I think that's the reason why. But I'm kind of liking the Browns. I liked them this past year, even though they had a rough season. They have some good weapons. They in the draft last year, they had Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame, who was a steal because he was projected to go like 13th overall, and he dropped to like 50th. It was crazy, and the Browns really stole him. And plus, they got Myles Garrett, who's a beast. I believe he's still with them. He's not a free agent, I don't think. And the Browns, they got the dual running backs with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. And then they've also got okay wide receivers, not like the best, but certainly not bad. And it does depend on what Baker Mayfield is going to do this upcoming year. They are extending his contract to his 5th-year option. I think that was this year. If not, that's next year. But they are planning on going with Baker Mayfield. They're not planning on going away from it. That's what at least the head coach says. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I would say the Browns are like an overlooked team, and they're like a complete team too. So it all depends on Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, definitely. Coming in number 13, the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, the early offseason drama with Kyler Murray seems to not be the case anymore. Like, he's definitely staying with them. We've also got DeAndre Hopkins on that team. You know, he's been doing well, but the Cardinals, like every great team in the past, like I think Pittsburgh a few years ago were like 11-0, and then they completely stunk.
Fell apart,
And they did terrible. That was kind of the same with the Cardinals. I remember they were competing with the Packers for that top NFC spot, and then they just completely
first round, right?
They completely fell off. Yeah, so. Arizona, it all depends on like the consistency part. Can Kyler Murray maintain the charge for the team? And can DeAndre Hopkins stay healthy? That's the biggest thing with those two, I think, because that connection could be lethal, and it was lethal last year for a long stretch. But I think with the Cardinals, it's another thing. Like, they could be top 5 or they could be bottom 10. Like, you don't know. So.
Yeah, I would say the Cardinals, it all depends next season on DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray, like their connection. If they can improve on what they did last year, then I think the Cardinals could be a top team again. But there's like a lot of different options for Kyler Murray to use on the offensive side. And they have James Conner in the backfield, who I believe who led the league in touchdowns. James Conner, I think. So the Cardinals offense is stellar. They have a decent defense, and if they just continue to improve, then I feel like they could be one of those top teams to compete. But it all depends on Kyler Murray.
It does depend a lot on Kyler Murray, and they've also got AJ Green on the offensive side. Who they started to develop. Kyler Murray and AJ Green started to develop a connection later in the season last year when DeAndre Hopkins was hurt a lot. But I liked the Cardinals this past year, even though they kind of blew it near the end of the season. I picked them to go to the Super Bowl and win it at the beginning of last season. And it started off really strong, and I was like, man, I'm doing really good here. But then they started to fall off. But they also had some injuries. J.J. Watt, I think he's still with the Cardinals this upcoming year, and he was out for a lot of the second half of the season. And they've got some other defensive weapons and some really great offensive weapons. And Kyler Murray is such a great quarterback. He's very good, and people praise him, but I think he's still a little underrated because he can still pass the ball like really well, but he's also super quick. So it really depends on what's going to happen with Kyler Murray. But I think that the Cardinals are going to do well again this upcoming year.
It just stinks that they don't have Larry Fitzgerald. Like Larry Fitzgerald was
know.
so good on the Cardinals, and then as soon as he leaves, they get like an amazing team together.
Yeah.
I know, right? Now coming in number 12, the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson. Great quarter. I mean, he's proved himself time and time again. It's just like the same thing. I think Baltimore started off strong and then they kind of fell off toward the end of the season. But Lamar Jackson, like another solid, and he's definitely proved himself to be a franchise quarterback at this point. J.K. Dobbins was doing well, I think. And I think the Ravens can make a solid push. I didn't really look too in depth in them this season. I know the only real Ravens game I kind of watched was when they went against the Packers, and Lamar didn't even play. So, but I think the Ravens are always like that kind of team, like especially with Lamar Jackson. They can make that playoff push for sure, and I think they will this year.
Now with the Ravens, they have a decent team with Marquise Brown, of course, one of like the quickest wide receivers, I'd say, and he can make a lot of plays. But I would say I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but Lamar Jackson is so overrated. Lamar Jackson is just like he's like an okay. He's a great mobile quarterback, but he's an okay passer. And if you can't, I would just say he's overrated, and the whole Ravens are overrated. So I would move them lower on the list, honestly.
That's fair. Lamar Jackson is a great running back.
Yeah.
But is he that great of a passer? He did do a little better in the passing game, arguably, this past year. But it was hard to tell because he was so hurt in this last year. Like he was in and out of weeks with different injuries. And they were doing very well when he was the solid starter. And they were like maybe 8-2 around that record. And then as he got injured and the other quarterback, I forget his name, they had two different ones. But as they were participating in those weeks, they did very poorly against their opponents. And they also lost 2 games in overtime because they went for 2-point conversions instead of just kicking the field goal. Or not in overtime, but to go into overtime, they lost because they went for the 2-point conversion and did not convert. So maybe if Lamar Jackson stays healthy, they could be a very good team. And I think that's why they're 12 on this list, because they could make that run with Lamar Jackson healthy. But like Jordan said, he could be overrated and he could just fall apart this past year. So it really depends on him.
The last thing on the Ravens is that J.K. Dobbins actually tore his ACL in the preseason.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And if Lamar Jackson missed the last month of the season, but when he was healthy, they were able to beat the Chiefs. And they had the second most injuries in the league.
True.
So hopefully they stay healthy. I think they're a decent team. Lamar Jackson on the field, he definitely improves them, but I say he's overrated. And losing J.K. Dobbins is a big hit for the organization. So we'll see how they bounce back.
Yeah, I think Lamar proves himself as more than a running back this year, for sure. He's just got to stay healthy. Coming in number 11, the LA Chargers. Justin Herbert, guys, looks absolutely amazing. Definitely a franchise quarterback for the Chargers. A stud in this league for sure. But again, like I said, that AFC West division is so tough this year. But can the Chargers make a push? I think they can. Like they've got solid weapons. They still got Austin Eckler. He's always been a great running back.
Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen. They have a lot of weapons.
They do have a lot of weapons.
And they just signed Mike Williams to, I think, a 3-year contract.
Yeah. So yeah, they've definitely got the offensive weapons. I think it's more the defensive end. Can they, continue to be dominant? Like they still got Derwin James, is one of the best safeties in the league, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see for sure.
The offense is set, and Justin Herbert is one of those stellar quarterbacks in the league. So it all depends on the defense. And if the defense can perform well, then they could be one of those top contenders.
True. All I've got to say is that doctor that punctured Tyrod Taylor's lung last year is the MVP of the Chargers right now, because they found their guy with Justin Herbert, and he only was able to prove himself because Tyrod Taylor was out for those few weeks and then ended up being out for the rest of the season because Justin Herbert was doing so well. But the other thing with Justin Herbert is that of all NFL history, I believe, Justin Herbert in his first 2 years has the most passing yards of any quarterback ever. And that's really something to say about Justin Herbert and the Chargers in general, their offense at least. I don't know how good their defense is. I don't think it was that great this past year. But the Chargers could have made the playoffs this year if they just ended in a tie, or if they were able to beat the Raiders in the last week of the season. I think it was the Raiders. Yeah, and they didn't make it, but they're a young team. They could continue to do really well in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's, that covers from last week. We went over the top 10. So now we want to talk about. We started top. I thought we
did the 10 through 4 last week, but we didn't do the top.
All right,
3.
yeah, the order is kind of tricky. I completely forgot.
If you want looking for those, go to last week's show.
Sorry, the order's kind of jumbled up, but number 3 we got the Buffalo Bills. I think like all these top 3 teams, of course, are going to be Super Bowl contenders, but the Bills, I think, if they got through the Chiefs, which they were so close, guys, I think they win the Super Bowl. I really do think they beat the Bengals and they win the Super Bowl. So I think the Bills, I've got the Bills coming out of the AFC this year. I think Josh Allen proves himself as an elite weapon. They still got Stephon Diggs. The defense looks solid. Obviously, people are going to say they kind of crumbled against the Chiefs, but it's the Chiefs. I mean, they've got Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. Like, it's going to be tough to stop them. But I think the Bills' defense for most of the regular season looks very solid. So I think the Buffalo Bills are coming out of the AFC, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say last year it was the only thing that stopped them from winning the Super Bowl was the overtime. And if it was on the flip side and they won the coin toss, then they would have won the Super Bowl, in my opinion, because then they would have probably went down, scored a touchdown against the Chiefs, go on and win the Super Bowl. But Josh Allen, in my opinion, is the best quarterback in the league. He can do it all. He can pass, he can run, he can get out of certain situations. Stephon Diggs is, coming from a Vikings fan, I would say it's kind of biased, but I would put him top 5 wide receiver in the league.
I agree.
And also their defense is so stellar that their defense can carry them to a championship as well. The only thing that they were missing last year was Trey White because he got hurt. If they had Trey White, then maybe that game would have been completely different with against the Chiefs. So if Trey White can stay healthy and their defense just gets better and Josh Allen remains the same and their offense slightly improves, I feel like they're the most complete team in the league right now. So in my opinion, I would put the Bills winning the Super Bowl next year.
I would put Bills number 1. And just because they had last year in their regular season, they had the best defense and the best offense, and they lost 1 game to the Chiefs. And I only watched the last 2 minutes of that game, and it was the best game that I've ever seen in my entire life. For those 2 minutes, it was insane. And it was the last 2 minutes of that game where there was so much scoring and so much happening, and those 12-second drive by Patrick Mahomes. That was an amazing game. But the Bills are so complete on the offensive and defensive end, and I don't think there's any really big moves that are happening with Buffalo for this year. So everyone from last year will likely get better this upcoming year, and I think they've got a really great chance this upcoming season.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But number 2, you got to put the team who beat the Bills above them, Kansas City Chiefs. Couldn't get it done against the Bengals in the AFC Championship, but they've got the best quarterback in the league, arguably. Patrick Mahomes, just year in and year out, it's going to be super consistent. They've got so many weapons: Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman, Travis Kelce. They've got a solid running game, and I think their defense is still elite. Like, they've got Chris Jones is definitely the one guy returning that I think is solid.
Is Chris Jones on the Chiefs?
Yeah, Chris Jones on the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought he was on the Cardinals for some reason.
Oh,
No, it's Chandler Jones.
Chandler
Jones.
Jones.
Yeah,
no, Chris Jones, front line, definitely a solid player. And I think, the Chiefs year in and year out, they're going to win the division and they're going to make the AFC Championship again.
See, I would say the Chiefs, their offense is amazing. They probably have the best offense in the league, with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and now Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the backfield. They probably have the most complete offense in the league, but I would say their defense is the only reason why they're not going to beat the Bills. If we get another rematch of that game in the AFC Championship game, or those are like the top 2 teams in the AFC, I would still have the Bills over just because of the Bills' defense. So that's why I would have the Bills over the Chiefs.
The only reason that Kansas City is up this high is because of their offense. And I don't think that should be the only reason for them being this high. I think they should be lower. They should be number 3 or 4 instead of number 2. because their defense is just not there. I mean, when they went up against the Bengals, they had 1 sack on him, on Joe Burrow. And I know that's just a defensive line, but still, they had 1 sack, whereas the rest of the teams had like a combined total of like 16 sacks. The Titans had, I think, 9 sacks on him, I think it was. And then in the Super Bowl, they had 7 sacks on him. So really, that defense is struggling. And I have to agree with Jordan that the Bills should be definitely higher on this list and the Chiefs should be lower.
Yeah, I would agree, but just don't sleep on the Chiefs. I mean, the
Yeah,
Chiefs
100%.
are going to make the
But
AFC
my,
Championship.
but my reasoning is only the defensive side.
Same.
We'll see what happens. Now coming in number 1, Super Bowl champions, Los Angeles Rams. Definitely the front runners right now in the NFC, deservedly so. Aaron Donald, Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, another outstanding season. Not much else to say about the Rams. I mean, I think everyone knows that they're going to be the top team in the NFC. Even with Rodgers and Devontae coming back, it's going to be tough for the Packers, like right out of the gates, to surpass the LA Rams. So Rams at number 1, no dispute, no question about it. Super Bowl champs, they deserve to be there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the defending Super Bowl champions, then you should be number 1 on this list. Matt Stafford definitely proved himself, as this was his first year out of Detroit, and he ended up winning a Super Bowl. So Matt Stafford, maybe one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now, obviously. They have a great offense. I would say their defense is really good too, but it all depends on if do we know for certain if Aaron Donald is coming back?
I don't think we know for certain, but I would imagine that he would be coming back.
If he comes back, then that changes their whole defense into like
True.
just improves. So if their team stays where it is, then they're gonna be number 1, no doubt.
I think that the Rams kind of went on a run this year because they had, well, I don't know, because when they got OBJ, they really went on a run there because he went off. He had half of his completions this year were touchdowns. And Matthew Stafford, yes, they did very well. I don't know. It's hard to say because I feel like they did kind of go on a run this year because it was the first year and they went all out on this year with Matthew Stafford. They traded away a bunch of picks. It depends on who stays with them. And like Jordan was saying, who stays with them and who leaves them. Their defense is pretty solid. It's not as good as the Bills. Their offense is also pretty solid. Probably better than the Bills. They got Robert Woods coming back too next year.
I would say Cooper Kupp is really like the key X factor on the offensive side because he won the Triple Crown last year.
Yep.
Most receiving yards, most receiving touchdowns, and most receptions.
Mm-hmm.
So if Cooper Kupp has the same year as he did last year, their offense is going to be elite.
True. And also with their running backs, I think their top running back was out for the season, I believe, from the beginning of the season. Am I right about that? That seems to ring a bell for me. I could be totally wrong. Yeah, Cam Akers. Yeah, he was out for the year. So when they get him back next year, they're going to be an even better team. I don't know. I'm still liking those Bills though. I would put Bills number 1, Rams number 2, but I see why they're first on those lists because they won the Super Bowl, and that's fair.
Yeah, definitely. Now we're going to transition into some NFL free agency. I'm just going to go down the list that my colleague Ryan wrote. Thanks, Ryan. Devontae Adams, as we said, franchise tag by the Packers. Godwin, franchise tag by the Buccaneers. Von Miller, it seems like he's going back to the Broncos. He's been hinting about it since Tuesday's Russell Wilson trade. It's going to be interesting to see because that's another key piece to the Rams defense that was solid, but he might be going back to the Broncos. I don't know.
I would say wherever he goes, he improves the team, like no matter what. So if he goes to the Broncos, they're gonna get even better. And if he stays at the Rams, and they could just be the same as what they did last year.
Yeah, I don't really see him going anywhere else besides the Broncos or staying with the Rams. It wouldn't really make too much sense. He's got so much history with the Broncos, and he had the Super Bowl championship with the Rams. I don't know what'll happen, but if he goes to those Broncos, man, they're gonna be good next year. I got this feeling.
Yeah, no, they definitely are.
If he goes back to Denver, like he could win them another ring. So
yeah,
see what happens.
Then we got Chandler Jones, Cardinals. I mean, I still see him staying with the Arizona Cardinals. I think. I don't really have any other destinations for him. J.C. Jackson. No, that's a cornerback. I think's really elite for the Patriots. It would be interesting to see which team gets him, but again, like with most of these guys, like you expect them to stay with the same team, but you never know. Like they can really go anywhere. Mike Williams, like you said, he just signed that 3-year deal with the Chargers, so he's staying. You've got Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson had like a downfall year last year, and
it
I
was
picked him in
so
my
bad.
fantasy draft.
Oh, it's
And I
tough.
was like,
though.
"Oh, like this guy's gonna like lead me to the championship," and then I dropped him like 6 weeks in because he did nothing. That
I
whole
mean,
season.
yeah, it's like he had a rookie quarterback, and then he had he had Andy Dalton first, and a rookie quarterback. So it's tough as a receiver when you have to
Yeah.
deal with completely different quarterbacks.
But there were some wide receivers like Darnell Mooney was really good for the
Yeah,
Bears. And
he did well. They just couldn't find that connection with Allen Robinson. And I don't know what it is, but I feel like sometimes when players get on that franchise tag, they just like, oh, I don't need to prove myself anymore.
yeah,
So they just kind of stop. But I don't know. Allen Robinson is such a great receiver, and he has been for many years until this year. And I don't know what's going to happen with him. I could really see him going to a different team because he's going to want to get the ball thrown to him. So
I'd say he's gonna have a bounce back year.
I agree.
Then we got Davion Clowney. Any predictions with him? I think wasn't he? He was Titans, correct? Tennessee.
I believe so.
Yeah,
I'm
I
unsure.
think he was still Tennessee. I don't know. He moves around so much.
He does, yeah.
But Clowney, he's solid. Hasn't really lived up to expectations, but he's been a solid player. So, now going on Stephon Gilmore. Obviously acquired by the Panthers after the Patriots, but we'll see about him.
That was a crazy trade. I would say Gilmore is either going to stay with Carolina or he's going to go to a team where he can compete for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think he will get traded or he'll just leave. I don't think he'll get traded. Sorry, he's got to get signed somewhere else because he's gonna want a ring.
I could see him going to Denver.
That would be wild if they could just put together like a Buccaneers style team with like a bunch of 1-year contracts. I don't know. Broncos could really win.
Yeah, we'll see if they have the cap space.
Or
true,
he could really be a good fit in Arizona too.
Yeah, we'll see. He's just got to stay on the field. I mean,
yeah,
that's the biggest thing with Stephon Gilmore. Then we got Tyron Matthew, who was, speaking of players staying on the field, I think he was out against the Bengals it was either the Bengals or the Bills game. I think it was the Bills. It was the Bills game. Started the game. He was out, and that hurt their defense tremendously. Tyron Matthew's always a solid safety. I think he's staying with the Chiefs. I don't see any reason why he'd leave. Just add some more arsenal to that already amazing team.
The Honey Badger.
I think he's staying.
Yes.
Then we got OBJ. I think he's staying with the Rams.
He's got to stay.
He's either doing that or he's retiring. I mean, I don't know. That ACL injury is always scary, especially for wide receivers, because that's how they make fast cuts, and you tear your ACL and you never come back the same.
And he also got the Super Bowl, so
he got the Super Bowl ring.
He might just retire on top.
It's more incentive, for him to.
I gotta be honest. OBJ, if he does retire, this is not his last season. He will be back. Drama always surrounds him.
Yeah.
And I feel like even though he's got an ACL injury, he's gonna want to stay in football. And if he doesn't stay in football this year, he retires, he's for sure coming back. Unless something dramatic were to happen that he wasn't able to come back. But drama just surrounds him wherever he goes. So I feel like that's gonna catch up to him with the Rams.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just looking up because the next
he's like Antonio Brown, I would say. Him and Antonio Brown are like same personality.
It's going to be interesting to see what Antonio Brown does as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, Antonio Brown later down this list. But we have two great tight ends, Mike Gaseki and Dalton Schultz. I think one of them signed the franchise tag. I forget which one, though. Because I thought Dak had the franchise tag with Dallas and Gaseki might have gotten it with the Dolphins.
That would make sense.
Regardless, two great tight ends.
I think Gaseki is really, really solid.
Yeah,
he is. Yeah, he's kind of underrated. He's not known that well, except among fantasy players, I would say. Or if you're a Dolphins fan, he's very solid. He catches a lot of balls, and he was that safety net for Tua Tagovailoa last year.
Yeah, definitely. Then we got Michael Gallup. So I think both those guys, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't stay.
Yeah, Cowboys, I feel like they could make a run this year. They could always make a run, and it's really dependent on how they do in clutch situations.
Well, yeah, with this next guy, Michael Gallup, he got injured last year. Toward the end of the season. They didn't have him for the playoffs, so that was a big hit.
But Amari Cooper, what's happening with him?
We'll see. I mean, it could.
I say if Gallup, Amari Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb all stay in Dallas, then they have a really good chance at competing for a Super Bowl.
Honestly, even if Amari Cooper does not stay, I think that Dallas still has a chance, a very good chance, because that would give more opportunities to Lamb and Gallup. But they're such good wide receivers. Honestly, all three of them are such good wide receivers, and I don't know what's going to happen with Cooper, but if he stays, they'll be good. If they leave, I think they'll be good too.
Yeah, I think they just got to re-sign Gallup.
Yeah.
We talked about Antonio Brown, Cordero Patterson, Falcons, great running. He was
He was
doing really
utility.
good.
He was
Yeah, he's
everything.
like
great
running back, wide
utility, yeah.
receiver.
Yeah.
I would love to see him back on the Vikings. 'Cause Cordero Patterson was like, I remember one play he like had a kick return for over 100 yards.
Yeah.
It was insane. He's like one of the top kick returners. In the league.
Yeah.
Patterson, I feel like this was a fluke year for him because he was not that great the last couple years. And then this year he just randomly just did really well with the Falcons because I think he just fit that role. But I don't think that he can do this on any other team besides the Falcons. So if he returns to the Falcons, especially with Calvin Ridley out for the year now, suspended for betting, then he's going to have a great season again. But if he doesn't go back to the Falcons, then I don't think he's going to have a great season with whoever else he goes to.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And then we got Rob Gronkowski. I think he's out the door. I think he retires.
I think he retires too with Tom Brady.
Yeah, retires with Tom Brady, or he goes to the Packers now.
If
There
the
were rumors
Buccaneers
about
get
that.
Jameis Winston, there's a chance that he'll stay. But if they don't get any good quarterback, I don't think he's staying. I think he's retiring. I don't think he's
Yeah.
going anywhere else either. He's just a great player for Brady, really. And then if he has a good quarterback around him, he's a great tight end. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and then speaking of the Buccaneers, yeah, Jameis Winston, a free agent. He could
Mhm.
go to Tampa Bay. Do the Saints keep him? Probably not.
I-
I think
I would see him going to Tampa Bay. That's
Yeah.
probably like the best
might
option
go
for him.
back.
I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we got Juju Smith-Schuster.
Juju needs to stay off TikTok, and then he'll be one of the best receivers again.
That's
but-
Steelers receiving core, man. Him and Chase Claypool, like they just
Yeah.
gotta focus on football.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know. He's a very good wide receiver, arguably, and during like his first year, is a great kick returner too. He's really quick. He's fast. He's got good hands, but he's got that trouble off the field, kind of not trouble, but
I would
could
s-
be troublesome for him.
I would see him staying in Pittsburgh. I feel like Pittsburgh's a perfect spot for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, perfect. And that's pretty much all the free agents we should go over.
Mhm.
And yeah, good talk, guys. And thanks for everyone for tuning in to Sports Chat episode 4 for Ethan, Jordan, and Ryan. See you guys later. Thanks.
Have a good one.